Amina wiped the polished mahogany floors of the sprawling Lagos estate, her hands raw from hours of labor. Outside, the city buzzed with chaos, honking cars, street vendors calling out, and the faint smell of jollof wafting from nearby homes. But inside, the silence of wealth pressed on her like a weight. She glanced at her phone, seeing another overdue tuition notice blinking back at her. Her scholarship had barely covered her books, and her part-time jobs weren't enough to keep her in school and afloat. She sighed, adjusting her worn apron, and reminded herself why she endured this. Her dream of becoming an architect, of rising beyond the cramped apartment she shared with her mother, never felt farther away. The estate's grand halls reflected chandeliers that glittered like frozen stars. Amina's eyes swept over the marble staircase and velvet curtains, marveling at the world she had only dared to imagine. Her employer, the stern house manager, barked orders from across the room, insisting she clean every speck of dust until the estate shone like a museum. Amina's pride kept her moving, despite the exhaustion, but today, a sense of unease lingered. From the shadows, a tall man appeared, impeccably dressed, with a gaze sharp enough to pierce through walls. Oba, the billionaire CEO who owned the estate, had returned unexpectedly. His presence sent a ripple through the staff, and Amina froze, wondering if he had noticed the way she meticulously arranged the silver cutlery or the way she carried herself despite her lowly position. There was something in his eyes, a spark of recognition, that made Amina's pulse quicken. She shook her head, telling herself it was nothing. Little did she know, Oba had come searching for a truth long hidden, and she, the struggling maid with dreams bigger than her poverty, was about to be caught in a web of secrets, wealth, and danger that would change her life forever. Amina carried a tray of polished silver teacups into the drawing room, careful not to spill a drop. Her eyes caught Oba standing by the large window, staring out over the Lagos skyline. His presence was commanding, a silent warning that the mansion belonged to him. She felt her stomach twist in nervous anticipation. Something about the way he observed her made her uneasy, yet strangely aware, as if he saw beyond her apron and worn shoes into the life she had fought so hard to keep private. Oba's piercing gaze lingered longer than politeness demanded, and Amina felt a chill. He was silent, but in that silence she sensed questions she could not answer. There was something familiar in her features that caught him off guard, a shadow from the past he had not expected to confront. Memories of a photograph tucked away in his late father's safe, a young girl with wide eyes and a hopeful smile, flickered in his mind. He had been searching for decades for the rightful heiress, and suddenly here she was, standing before him, unaware of the storm her existence could unleash. He spoke carefully, testing her knowledge of the estate. Amina answered respectfully, oblivious to the scrutiny behind his words. Each response, each movement told him more than any photograph could. Oba's curiosity morphed into determination. He needed to know the truth. Could this girl be the missing heir, the one who could claim the fortune his family had fought over for generations? Amina, meanwhile, was lost in her own thoughts, dreaming of freedom, little knowing that her life of struggle was about to collide with a world of wealth, power, and danger far beyond her imagination. The first seed of intrigue had been planted. Amina was dusting the shelves in the library when Oba appeared behind her. His presence so sudden, she nearly dropped the antique vase she had been polishing. His voice was calm, yet there was a weight to it that made her heart pound. "Amina," he began, pausing as if measuring each word, "have you ever seen this photograph?" He held up an old, faded picture of a young girl, wide-eyed, with a hopeful smile that mirrored her own. Amina blinked, confusion washing over her. I don't think so, sir," she stammered, though the image stirred something deep inside her, a strange familiarity she could not explain. Oba studied her closely, noting the subtle curves of her face, the shape of her eyes, and the tilt of her head. It was uncanny, almost impossible. He had spent years searching for this girl, the missing heiress of his family's fortune. And now, standing in front of him, was a living reflection of her. The room felt smaller, charged with tension. Amina felt a mixture of fear and fascination. This was no ordinary employer, no ordinary mansion, and she was no ordinary maid. Oba's sharp gaze softened slightly, almost imperceptibly, as he realized the magnitude of what he might have discovered. But he did not reveal everything. Instead, he made a careful decision to observe, to test, to understand who Amina truly was before revealing the dangerous truth that could change both their lives. For Amina, the encounter left her restless and curious. There was something magnetic about Oba, something both intimidating and oddly comforting. She could not yet know that this brief confrontation was the first step toward a world of luxury, secrets, and choices that could cost her more than she ever imagined. The spark of destiny had been lit, and nothing would ever be the same. Amina's days began to blur between laundry, dusting, and carrying trays of delicacies through the estate's marble halls. Yet, with each passing moment, Oba's presence became impossible to ignore. He observed her discreetly, often asking subtle questions about her life, her dreams, and her family. To the other staff, it seemed like simple curiosity, but Amina felt the weight behind his words, as if he were measuring her against some invisible standard. One evening, he called her into his private office. The room smelled of polished oak and old leather, the walls lined with towering shelves of books and family artifacts. He offered her a seat and began speaking carefully, almost like he was unveiling a puzzle. He told her stories of the estate, of her grandfather, and of the missing heiress who had vanished years ago. Amina listened, captivated, though unaware of the connection growing between the tales and her own reflection in the photographs. Oba watched her closely, noting the subtle reactions, how her eyes lingered on certain pictures, how her hands tightened around the edge of her skirt. Every movement confirmed the uncanny resemblance he had first noticed. Luxury felt strange and intoxicating to Amina, a world she had only glimpsed in dreams. Silk curtains, gleaming floors, rare art, and priceless antiques became her new backdrop. Yet she still carried the weight of her struggles, the overdue tuition, the cramped apartment, the longing for a future she feared might slip away. Oba's subtle mentorship was both thrilling and frightening, and she realized that stepping further into this world could offer opportunities she had never imagined, but it could also trap her in ways she had not yet seen. By the time she returned to her small room that night, Amina lay awake, torn between awe and apprehension. The estate had opened a door to a future she had always wanted, yet the key came with shadows she could not yet understand. The next morning, Amina found herself summoned to the grand study once again. Oba sat behind his polished desk, a leather-bound journal open before him. He handed it to her with a measured glance. "This belonged to your grandfather," he said quietly, "and it contains clues to a family legacy that disappeared years ago. I need someone I can trust to help me uncover the truth." Amina's hands trembled as she accepted the journal. The leather was worn, the pages yellowed with age, yet the writing inside hinted at a world far beyond her wildest dreams. Oba observed her closely, testing her reactions, noting her curiosity and determination. He watched as her brow furrowed, her lips pressed together, and a spark of intellect shone through her eyes. It was the first step in proving her worth, not just as a potential heiress, but as a partner in uncovering a secret that had eluded him for decades. But luxury came with complications. Among the estate staff, whispers began circulating. Some were jealous, others suspicious of the attention Oba lavished on a mere maid. Amina felt eyes on her everywhere she went, quiet murmurs following her footsteps. Even more complicated was the strange pull she felt toward Oba himself, a dangerous, magnetic tension that made her cheeks flush and her heart race. She knew she could not allow herself to get distracted, yet every conversation, every glance drew her further into his orbit. By evening, she retreated to her modest room, the journal clutched against her chest. A plan was forming in her mind, a careful strategy to prove herself, to uncover the clues, and to navigate a world of wealth, deceit, and subtle seduction. One thing was clear, every step she took brought her closer to the inheritance, but also closer to the kind of danger she had never imagined. Amina stayed late in the library that evening, poring over the journal Oba had entrusted to her. Among the carefully pinned entries and sketches of the estate, she discovered a folded letter tucked between the pages. The handwriting was elegant, familiar, and as her eyes scanned the words, a chill ran down her spine. The letter hinted at hidden property, secret accounts, and the final piece of the inheritance puzzle, a clue that could change everything. Her heart pounded as she realized she might be standing on the threshold of a fortune her family had lost decades ago. But success brought danger. Gossip among the staff reached a boiling point, jealousy flaring into confrontation. Some servants accused Amina of favoritism, whispering about her proximity to Oba, and the house manager's scorn intensified. Amina felt the sting of humiliation and suspicion, yet she could not let it distract her. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let petty envy derail her path. And above it all, there was Oba. His presence had shifted from distant observation to subtle guidance, his attention almost suffocating at times. Every glance, every word carried a weight she could not ignore, pulling her closer even as the inheritance mystery deepened. When Oba approached her later that night, carrying a rare book she had once admired, their hands brushed. The contact was brief, but electricity surged through her, leaving her breathless. For the first time, she saw vulnerability in the otherwise impenetrable billionaire, a softness reserved only for her. The lines between duty, attraction, and ambition blurred. Amina knew she was no longer just a maid in the estate. She was a player in a dangerous game of wealth, love, and power, and every choice she made would shape her destiny in ways she could not yet foresee.